copywriting. They probably have a tool suite that is crazy, right? Social posting suites, maybe ad buying suites, maybe PPC suites. Maybe they have keyword optimization tools that they're using, right? I would then start looking at all these things they're spending money on. And I would say, how do I get to know one of those things? Real example, again, continuing to make this very real. I just sat down with someone that runs one of the largest keyword optimization softwares in the world. And they happen to be based out of Reno, which is where I am. And we had a great conversation. And as Christian's telling me this,
Yo, this is Christian Devins with Journey with Christian Devins podcast. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to our amazing podcast. This is where we reveal the top 1% of business concepts and systems and processes to scale 8 and 9-figure businesses. We interview top-level 8 and 9-figure CEOs, business owners, and amazing TEDx speakers like David Meltzer. We got Nick Cavuto, Pascal Bachman, and so many others. And if you feel like this resonates with you, please share this with your friend, your family, and make sure you impact them as well, because we're trying to spread the message on those that do not know how to scale 8, 9-figure businesses and talking higher level business concepts. So guys, remember, enjoy the episode and be uncommon if you can. Cheers. Thank you so much for tuning into Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. I'm your host, Christian D. Evans. $35 million in top line revenue. This individual helped area manager for the Reno branch for BBSI. This man went to work at BBSI and helped this company top line $35 million during his tenure at this company. He's expanded the local team, coordinated the expansion and renovation of the Reno branch in the last year with BBSI. The Reno branch was one of the top 5 branches in the company. Because of his expertise in this, he pivoted in 2020, late 2020, and decided to pursue his passion, consulting, speaking. And now he's the CEO and founder of Devin Consulting. My friend, please welcome Devin Sizemore. How you doing, my man?
wonderful, brother. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey man, really looking forward to this because I mean, just kind of pivoting very quickly from, corporate to all of a sudden really doing a lot of business strategy. And, you are an amazing networker. But before we dive into that a little bit, I just want to kind of, share with you, ask you really kind of what made you decide to pivot? What made you decide to go into more of like, hey, I want to add value to these business owners that I see struggling. I have this expertise and I know that I could add value. And I'd love to just kind of get your perspective on, what was the pivot in late 2020, man?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you got to go back a little bit before that. So I've always been an entrepreneur, since I could walk and talk. I've always done something to make money. And when I went to BBSI, it was the right time. It was the right opportunity. It was a good opportunity to go into corporate. I was one of the youngest area managers, so you can't really say no. But what I found is the money wasn't everything. I really like working for myself, and I like being able to pivot quick and have the impact I think businesses and individuals need to have. And so after 2.5 years there, I just kind of my gut was telling me, hey, go do what you like to do, right? I've had a marketing agency, a manufacturing company, a co-working space. And I just wanted to get back to that grind and that hustle of working for myself and being able to impact people the way I think they need to be impacted versus, hey, here's the toolkit corporate gave you, and this is all we can do.
No, that makes sense. And what I find so interesting is, where do you think that hustle came from? Do you think that came from, some people that you worked with, you've connected with, or is that just always been, like you said, more of just a character trait that you've always had deep down inside of you, a gene, if you will?
Yeah. So it's fun when you look back at why are you innately an entrepreneur? And I think you can be an entrepreneur and own your own business. I think you can be an entrepreneur and work for someone else. I think it's a mentality. As a kid, I spent all my summers with my grandparents down in Southern California. My grandpa owned a gun store. And every summer I would go down there and I would work with him, right? I would go in and he would have me cleaning and I would watch him. It's a cash business, right? So he would take a ton of cash every day. And I started to see this is what business can do. And he started to teach me hard work. My parents are both really hard workers. And so I think that the combination of seeing the entrepreneur side every summer and then living in a household where my parents were always pushing and working hard kind of created that foundation for me to want to go for it. And I think you've got to be a little bit of a risk taker to be an entrepreneur. And I definitely have that in me.
I love it. And you're exactly right when you're talking about risk. And I'm curious, I mean, coming from this, I think a lot of people struggle with this, whether you just started out, whether you're even at a 7-figure entrepreneur, right? You're always thinking about cash flow, revenue. And the thing is when you jump into that entrepreneurial world, coming from a job security, you got health insurance, you got all this, benefits, you got a paycheck every 2 weeks, right? It's a guaranteed thing, whether you suck at your job or not, right? It's coming in. And the thing is, though, is going to more of entrepreneurial. It's like, okay, now I got to produce value to these people, and the only way I get revenue and money in my pocket is producing a lot of value. So when you went into that risk, you've got some kids, you've got a family that's relying on you. Kind of help me walk through that a little bit. What was that? A little worrisome, definitely in 2020. There was a lot during pandemic. There was a lot of concern. I'd love to get your kind of what was going on in your head and how you were able to really pull that out of your butt, I guess, huh?
Yeah, for me, it's muscle memory. So when I started my first, we'll call it big business, I was right out of college. I started a marketing agency, and I literally started in the second bedroom of my apartment. I started with just enough money in the bank to survive 1 month. And it was kind of that force of, you've got to go close deals or you're not going to survive. And I think that experience taught me, like, I can go out and make cash happen and I can get deals across the finish line. Now you got to be able to produce the deals, right? And because I had that muscle memory of scaling that agency, it was easy for me to jump back in. And I didn't jump in cold, right? Like, I still have always had consulting clients. For the last decade, my longest term client's been with me for 8 years. So I had some foundation, and then I had that muscle memory from doing it before.
Yeah, and what I love about that is like you've acquired skills at a very young age, and so now when you jump into this, it's just like riding a bike. It's just being able to deploy it. So my question then is, what would you say are certain skills that you developed that allowed you to really scale this business as consulting a lot faster and quicker than before? And obviously, I know there are certain skills that you've acquired. Like you said, you got to go out there and hunt. What does that look like, and how are you able to leverage some of those skills and traits to effectively, speed out that process in your consulting biz?
Yeah, some of this might be different than people are used to hearing. So I love the question, and we'll take some time here. So the first thing is meet everybody. I think often when we get into business, time is money, right? And we start to limit who we're willing to take a meeting with and who we're willing to have coffee, tea with, sit on a Zoom with. And I think that you're doing yourself a disservice. So first, you have to be open and willing to meet everybody. And here's why. And here's a really good teaching tool. Often when we're in business, we're out there trying to find clients, right? Ideally, everyone on here and everyone listening knows what a client is. You can probably create your client persona. Maybe there's 5 or 6 of them. When I'm out networking, and what I teach people to do is, I want you to stop chasing clients, and I want you to switch from a one-to-one mentality to a one-to-many mentality to a many-to-many mentality. So here's a quick hierarchy for that. The first thing I want you to look for is vendors. So who do your clients spend money with? Great example. Christian and I are sitting here talking, right? I have clients that probably could use Christian services. Christian may have clients that could probably use my services. That would be a vendor relationship. They're already some trust, they're already spending money, and they have access to many of my clients. Above vendors, we have where do our clients get educated? We have where do our clients gather? We have who do our clients trust? So consultants, centers of influence. And then we have connectors as kind of the top tier. When I'm out networking, I'm looking for everything but clients. I'm looking for the vendors, the connections, the associations, where they gather, all these other things. And where people do a disservice is they sit down and go, hey, this hairstylist is probably not my ideal client. They might not be running a 7-8 figure business, or maybe they don't have a huge marketing budget if I'm an agency owner, but we don't know who the hairstylist's partner is. We don't know what their kids do. We don't know what their family does. We don't know what associations or organizations they're a part of. We don't know what influence they have outside of their core 9 to 5. Everybody nowadays has a second hustle or a cash flow. I have to take the meeting, but I have to do it with the intent of asking the right questions so that I can understand their influence and tap into that. So that would be kind of my long-winded first part. And then the next thing is, so 1, meet everyone. 2, understand who you're meeting and expand who you meet with. And then number 3, always add value. So you've got to make connections, you've got to provide education, and you got to drive value in relationships as soon and as fast and as often in a relationship as possible. If you do those things, the pipeline is going to blow up.
Well, it's so interesting because see, it's such a long-term thinking instead of this transactional. In fact, I was literally on a meeting the other day about like just let's collaborate, and she got her off of LinkedIn, and she's like, "Hey, this is actually I really appreciate this conversation because I thought it was going to be a sales call, because quote unquote, hey, let's collaborate, and then all of a sudden it turns into a pitch." And what I love about your approach and something that you really taught me is just like you said, adding value and goodwill. And if you could, because you have a really cool YouTube video on this training and content and what you kind of walk through. Where did you learn that from? And then if you could kind of help me walk us through some of the connections and network that have been able to lead to bigger, like you said, bigger buckets of clients and big pipeline because you had that long-term approach.
Yeah, so I worked for a marketing agency in college, and thankfully he was part of a national mastermind for the local Internet Marketing Association. Masterminds are super powerful, and in there, one of the coaches was talking about this idea of, hey, stop selling to one client and create influence. And he talked about the value equation, visibility plus credibility equals profitability. So you got to be visible through speaking, brand awareness, things like that. You have to build credibility by being on a stage or being a content creator, and then that equals profitability. And a lot of the core strategy that it was talking about was that kind of one to many or many to many approach. I then had the chance to scale an agency into a niche market nationally. And we did that by going through two of the biggest consultants in that space. We earned their trust by providing services to them and helping them create content for their client base. And then that allowed us to get into their trade shows, their events. They recommended us. We spent money with them, and we ended up going to these trade shows and pulling out 6-7 figures worth of deals in a 3-4 day weekend. So that laid the foundation for this idea that there are ways to go out and build the concept of one to many or many to many. The thing I like to talk to people about is mirroring. So we've probably talked about this if you're in like a situation, a networking event or a meeting. And if I cross my arms, right, like this, and I stand here in the room long enough, someone in the room is going to cross their arms, right? If I put my hands in my pocket, the person I'm meeting with is probably going to put their hands in their pocket. And you can create that mirroring influence physically. That translates to how you have meetings, and it translates to how we generate referrals. So if you think about where do you get all of your business? Where's the majority of your business come from? A lot of people say referrals, right? Word of mouth, referrals, warm introductions. Great. How do you get more of those? I don't know. Ask my current clients. Okay, cool. That's great. Step one. But what if we could create a system that does that for you on autopilot? And so that's what we do. When we build relationships, we go out there and we ask really intelligent questions, and we never leave a meeting without being able to make a connection. So when I sit in a meeting, my only goal in a meeting is to know enough about you to connect you with someone in my network that can add value to you. If I can add value to you by making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 connections really fast, it's teaching you to do what I want you to do. I want you to add value to me by making connections, right? But I can't expect that from you if I don't do what I want. So that's really the formula, is how many referrals can I make a month? In the month of May, we just did our recap for our team. We sent out 392 connections in the month of May. And from that, we received over 100 introductions back. That's the power of this. But to your point earlier, this didn't start yesterday, right? This is a decade-long network value building system that now is producing at a rate that's phenomenal, but you can start small and grow into that. Again, if you use the mirroring and if you understand that. Here's a really interesting one. I have a realtor friend, right? He's out there building a pretty good agency. He's looking for the typical, right? Realtors look for mortgage lenders, insurance agents. That's about it. Excuse me. I connected him with a floor cleaner who's expanding into residential. They now host a monthly networking event. They have 50 people attending their networking event, floor cleaner, realtor. And from that, they both have produced, the realtor has 6 deals and the floor cleaner has 20 deals they've produced. And so instead of going after the mortgage lender, insurance agent, we matched up 2 people, same client base.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of have this conversation because see, I love what you're talking about. And what's so interesting, Devin, is I'm literally experiencing what you're saying because I remember our conversation, we only met at like a week or 2 weeks, and you were kind of walking me through that process a little bit. And I knew that I could optimize and dial in what I'm doing and what I'm structuring. And so one of the things that I started doing very quickly was just like you were saying, is just adding value to people and saying, hey, you know what? I may not be your perfect client, probably don't need your service, but I do know someone that maybe has your ideal client. And then bringing them in my Rolodex, right? And saying, hey, you should connect. And like you said, just right off the bat, literally when I get off the phone call, I'm literally introducing them via email. And all of a sudden that builds amazing goodwill. And whether it produces results or not, it doesn't matter. Like the reality is like, hey, now all of a sudden that may have some cool synergy and they'll always remember you for it. Now, my question though is I like to talk a little bit more of like the infrastructure and the systems that you developed, because obviously it can get pretty wild, pretty quick, crazy. But also you want to make sure that you're effective in those connections as well. So if you could walk us through a little bit kind of how you structure your systems, your processes, stay organized, you have a team, leveraging your CRM to take the right notes, as well as just making sure you're collaborating with those right individuals. If you could walk us through that.
Yeah, so your CRM's everything. If you don't have a dialed in CRM, this system's gonna break. So at the core of your CRM, you need to track what kind of connection is a person, and a person could be everything, right? So in our CRM, the hierarchy I talked about with, client, vendor, consultant, influencer, get place they gather, association, I'm tagging people based on where they have influence. I also tag industries that they're looking to engage with. And then I have my first discovery meeting notes logged in the CRM. And so does every one of my team members. And in there, we're looking at who's their ideal client, where do they want to network, why do they want to network there, what's working from a marketing and sales strategy, what are their pain points, right? Because maybe we can solve that through a connection. We talk a lot about current state, future state. So we identify like what's between you and your desired future state. Again, I'm looking for opportunities to put someone in front of them that can fill a hole that they may have. We then track every single contact in our CRM has a task assigned, period. And they have to, because why would you have a contact in your CRM if you're not doing anything with the contact that's in your CRM? So 100% of the contacts in our CRM have a follow-up task. At a minimum, the task is check in, and those tasks typically are 30, 60, or 90 days. And you're going to get a check-in email from us that is value-driven, asks what's going on in your world, and asks how we can help you. That's the core foundation for the formula to make this work. Those check-in emails nurture the long-term relationship. They create the opportunity to reteach my network that I'm trying to add value. This is the script for that. And this is the script we use for a lot of our follow-up emails. So that script says, Christian, how are you doing? Checking in. That's the subject. And it says, hey, hope you're doing well, having a great day. What's new and it's been a while since we last connected. What's new and exciting in your world? Please let me know if there's any introductions or connections I can make for you to add value to you and your business and company. Sometimes I'll do a soft ask like, hey, I've had success with blank. If you know anyone in your network, let me know. Have a great day. Most of the time, it's truly just about you. What we find is about 30% of the people we send emails to reply with a clear ask, or they ask us to take a meeting. And it allows us to continue to further relationships just on the check-in email. So that's the kind of foundational system and process that allows us to nurture our network and make sure we're not missing a relationship that we put the energy in to get into the system. On the referral connection base, we have an Excel document where we track every introduction. And we do this because on a monthly basis, we want to look at, hey, who did we send to who? And we want to follow up with the introduction and say, hey, was this valuable? Was it not valuable? Did it become a client? Did it turn into something good? Or was it a horrible introduction? Because I'm not afraid of bad connections, but I need to be able to have a real conversation with the person that might have messed up the conversation and say, hey, something might have seemed off in that meeting. What happened? So in there, I have who on my team made the introduction, when we made the introduction, who we made the introduction to, who we were introducing, why we made the introduction. And then we have a results column. So every month after we check in, we update the results column with turned into a client, turned into strategic value. In that realtor floor cleaner example, they're hosting a monthly event. And it starts to create this opportunity where we now can see where we may have leverage in our network because we've provided tremendous value. And now we can tap back into that document and say, hey, we connected this college student to these 6 companies, and he now works at one of these companies. I'm going to nurture him to see if we can build a relationship with the company. So that's the long-winded way, but there's kind of that foundational CRM management check-in email. And then there's the Excel doc that tracks the direct referrals.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this, and I love that. I love that approach because obviously you have to have systems and processes and develop. So when you're on a conversation with just like maybe collaboration, just networking in like 10, 15, 20 minutes, what does that call look like in that cadence? If you could just walk us through that a little bit and really making sure that, okay, we're not just, spitting the breeze, we're talking intentionally and we're saying, hey, what are, asking certain questions, identify their pain, and then as well as maybe mention and share with them what you do and say, hey, if you know anybody in your ecosystem or community, if you could just walk us through that a little bit and how to really optimize that 15, 20-minute window instead of pitching, but just adding value. What does that look like?
Yeah, so never pitch, please. I saw one of your interviews that you just did, right? Like that was the message there too, right? Like stop selling. A good quote that I want people to like put a post-it note on your monitor. Everybody wants to buy, nobody wants to be sold. Everybody wants to buy, nobody wants to be sold. It is our job to match a consumer up with the opportunity to purchase, right? And we do that by asking good questions. When we get on a first meeting or a discovery meeting where we're nurturing a relationship for the first time, we want to ask questions 80% of the time and only talk 20% of the time. And I only want to talk at the end of the meeting, never in the beginning of the meeting. So we always start with some soft talk. I highly recommend that you dig into people's social media to look for a talking point. Hey, I see your kid just graduated high school, or hey, you just got back from the Bahamas. How was that? Or man, did you just really climb that mountain? Because I would have died, right? Whatever that little nugget is that you can talk about, start there. And then the rest of the meeting always goes through the exact same flow. First, we ask, where are you now? What do you do? Right? So just the core, what do you do? I like to ask then, who's your ideal client, and really dig into like, who do you need to know? Early in the meeting, we're already talking about this, right? Hey, Christian, you do blank. Okay, great. Who do you work with? Why do you work with them? What value do you drive to them? Then we talk about how'd you get here? So, hey, what got you into this? How long have you been doing it? Why have you been doing it? I want to know your history because that opens up the potential for more networks than our current conversation. Because maybe you say, oh, you know what? I had a 10-year career in the construction space. Okay, well, interesting. Now I understand you have construction related relationships in your past that we could tap into. We then talk about future state. Hey, I understand where you're at. Where are you going? Where are you taking your business? Hey, I want to conquer the world. Okay, great. What's that look like? Why does it look like it? How many clients is that? What kind of revenue is that? Do you want to expand nationally? Do you want to stay locally? What are you trying to do and where are you trying to go? And then once we talk about future state, I always ask what's between now and then. So, hey, what's in your way, right? So you just got done telling me about this awesome plan to franchise your business or open new locations or bring on a business partner. What's between you and there? And they may say, well, my systems suck. My processes aren't ideal. I don't have enough time to accomplish that. Okay, great. And so that's the bulk of every meeting, right? Where are you now? Who's your ideal client? How'd you get here? Where are you going? What's in your way? That's the formula. At the end of that, you're probably going to ask me similar questions because what happens in meetings is the mirroring effect, right? If I ask you a set series of questions and you feel comfortable with them, you feel heard because you were able to talk and everybody wants to talk, then you're going to ask me similar questions, right? You're going to be like, hey, well, what do you do? And now what's really interesting is if you asked all the questions first and you did all of this ground laying and research, when someone asks you that question, you can answer in a way that is salesy, right? But they don't know that. Because now you're going to ask me, hey, Devin, what do you do? And I'm going to be like, I do blank. And whatever the blank is going to relate to the story and journey you just told me. And typically I'm going to relate to that gap between your current state and future state, right? You're going to tell me, hey, I don't have enough time and I really feel like I'm at capacity. And you're going to ask me what I do. I say, you know what? I work with entrepreneurs and professionals to help them buy back time so that they can scale to where they want to scale. Well, it's interesting, right? Because I do business consulting, but I answered in a way that's very relatable to you because I now know exactly what's between you and your desired future state. And then as you ask me some more questions, I'm going to teach you who to refer to me, but I'm going to do that in a way where I'm going to assume who you probably have connections with based on the information you just gave me. If your history was construction and I love working in real estate, I'm going to say, hey, you know what, in construction, maybe you came across some real estate investors. I'd love to connect with them because I do some XYZ projects as well. If that formula works, then at the end of the meeting, it's really basic. I probably have 5 to 7 connections I can make. I probably understand their pain points and where I might be able to plug and add value at a future moment, not today. I don't need to sell to you today. And then I'll usually say like, hey, this has been a great meeting. You know, based on our conversation, I have 3 or 4 referrals and introductions I'm going to make for you. You'll see those in the next couple of weeks. And if there's anything else you need from me, feel free to ask. I'm happy to make connections. If you're ever looking to cold call or build relationships in an industry vertical or market, put me on your database. You can always email me and just say, hey, do you know? And I'm always willing to read an email. You can't email me too much, man. I want to add value, right? Again, it's all about the next person and I'm trying to understand them. So that's the meeting flow. And we use that flow all of the time. And you'll notice in there, I position myself to sell without having to sell.
Yeah, because one of the things is, and I love this strategy because see, it's so effective because so many people are so used to that pitching. And so then when all of a sudden when you approach it this way, they go, wow, that was different. And they walk away like, man, I felt heard, I felt listened, and I really love the value of this. One individual, they call it the Sadie Hawkins, sales pitch, if you will. It's more of, instead of just giving value and then saying, hey, you know what, goodwill, and then naturally people will come to you. I love that approach. So let's kind of walk into a little bit on the back end. Okay, you have a lot of systems, processes developed to making sure that you're following up. One of the things is how do you, I could imagine it gets explosive very quickly, as in like, okay, you got a whole team, you got a whole structure of this. So my question is, what opportunities do you kind of focus on? Right? Obviously, it's relative to what you have to offer, and then everything else you say no, and it's just more of collaborating. My question is do you leverage a lot of referral partners to be able to, have those conversations? Say, hey, if I refer some people over, maybe I could get compensated or whatever, because I know you're big on that. And then as well as making sure that you're optimizing your service and you're only taking on deals and really putting your time and energy toward your consulting and strategy, and which is what you offer.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it is something that over time can become cumbersome. So we actually just rebranded, which is super fun. The new website's up. So we rebranded to Your Referral Partner. And at the core of our business is this concept of how do we go out and build and nurture relationships and then teach others to do the exact same thing. And so the check-in emails, those are manually sent every single month to every single contact in the CRM. And I know that seems like it's crazy. They are templated emails, but we always send them manually because what I find is when you do them on auto, you miss the opportunities where you just had a synergistic conversation. You just got a referral from someone. You just saw them at an event. And then you're sending this templated email that doesn't reference the fact that you just talked to them yesterday. So you've got to manually send those so that you don't look stupid and you can make sure that you're being genuine and authentic. Now I can send, and this is where I start my day. I always start my day with those check-in emails. And we're sending, myself and my team, I mean, we're probably sending between 50 and 100 of those a day, because you got to think that, we're doing it 30, 60, 90 days, and then they land on different days of the month. So it does spread it out quite a bit. And it's just a template. So it's literally open it up, copy, paste, reassign the task, open it up, copy, paste, reassign the task, open it up, copy, paste. And then the ones that you have a relationship with, you've got to add a little more detail. Now, when it comes to who I'm going to meet with, we're really strategic. Some of those check-in emails, we ask for meetings. Some of the check-in emails, we're truly just asking to add value. If we're chasing a big project, 100% of those emails just ask for how to add value, right? So we're buying time by not positioning ourselves at our point where everyone's like, hey, let's have meetings. And it's like, well, I can only have so many meetings, right? So our templates we use allow us to control time a little bit. And then what I've done now is I actually have, a sales rep who nurtures his own suite of relationships and is doing the exact same thing. And so now it's adding value to the whole company because he's nurturing and adding value. And now he actually is sending a lot of our check-in emails. And what I do is I just go in and I look at the ones he's going to do today and I take out the ones that have some sort of current conversation. and then he sends out all the rest. So you can buy time as long as you don't miss that point on the genuine part where you're sending this templated email to someone that you just had a conversation with. And then 100% of this is task driven and tracked in the CRM. And to your point, I mean, I said it when we started, meet everybody, add value to everybody. We don't really discriminate, man. We really try to just be genuine and add connections everywhere. Some of the biggest deals we've ever closed come from the weirdest, most random places. And they usually come somewhere in at some point you never expect. Like you'll just get a referral from Joe Bob that you met with one time and you sent 2 connections with 8 months ago. And all of a sudden Joe's like, hey, I was in a meeting and this guy wants to franchise nationally and he's looking for a board advisor. And you're like, well, fantastic. Like I can do that. And all of a sudden you end up with this 6-figure deal from this random 8-month ago relationship.
Well, and that's what I think is so remarkable because and the reason why I'm saying this is because so many people in today's world, they always think about transactional. And what I mean by that is just like the collapsing the time frame of that sales cycle, right? Oh, we got to collapse the time frame. What do we do? What's the return on investment in 30 days, 60 days, right? And the thing is, that's okay, right? And you have to do that to some extent, but also it's like you lose out on that transformational relationship sometimes by coming in and trying to pitch and whatever, but just coming in. And what I think is so remarkable, Devin, is when you say add value, you're not just saying, here, I created this book, I created this PDF, I created this little piece of content, here, I'm going to just send it over to you. It's actually having a conversation. What do you want? Who do you need to connect with? And then actually connecting with them. And that is actually how you truly add value, because it's like selfishly, what do they desire? Well, they want to build their business. So how can I help you build your business? Now that's one of the reasons why I also wanted to kind of emphasize on like what projects you take, because you want to be strategic with that. You can't be like, I want to help everybody and we get a profit share. It's like there are certain projects I can take on. One of the things that have helped me is like, okay, are they higher? And can they open up doors that I can't open up myself, like other networks and stuff like that? And then naturally, I'm willing to come alongside them and say, hey, I'm willing to help you take my energy, my resource, my effort, and help you, because naturally you can at some point, not saying right now, but transformational at some point, if I add enough value to you, naturally you're going to open up doors that I wouldn't be able to open up. Now, again, that's a selfish thing, but I also do know that, strategically, that's the way I look at it a lot of times. I'd love to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, let me comment on the quick close part, because I was chomping at the bit when you said that, but I want you to finish. So what's really interesting is there are some great ways to generate really quick deals and cash flow. However, it's so much easier when you have a warm network that's huge. If you wanted to challenge to who could close more deals that aren't actively in the pipeline in the next 7 days, I'll take the challenge. Because I have a warm database where there's debt equity, right? Meaning that my network feels like they owe me because I'm always trying to provide more value than I receive. I can pick up the phone and start calling and find opportunities. And I can do it in a way that's genuine and authentic because I am cold calling my hot and warm network, right? Versus cold calling a cold network. And all you can do when you're cold calling cold is pitch. Right? That's all you can do. All you can do is, how quick can I pitch? Can I get you in a discovery meeting? Can I try to get something to close? Versus I can go out and let's say I have a new referral relationship, right? And Christian and I get in an agreement. I say, hey, I'm going to help build referrals for you as I'm out working with agencies. And if they want to scale, you're the man. I'm going to tee you up. I then, have created leverage, right? I have leverage now because I don't have to do the project. I'm not fulfilling. I am matchmaking, getting a small success fee in there somewhere, right? Which buys capacity on my plate, adds to your vision in your future, right? And now I can start calling my network and say, hey, you know what? I met this awesome person. This is their product or service. Is there someone in your network that you've talked to recently that has this pain point? Or, hey, I just brought on this consultant that only works with chiropractors. Do you know any chiropractors? I'd love to just add them to my network and have a conversation. If they're a fit, great. If not, no worries. And I'll go spend and add to my database chiropractors for the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, I may have all those meetings and none of them are qualified to purchase, but now I've added this subset of contacts to my network. And then to your point of buying capacity, yes, we do business consulting. We're really selective on the products and services that we directly fulfill. We are in a couple large retainer relationships right now. At the end of the day, I would rather find someone who's really, really good at providing a product and service or solution, and I'd rather just put them in front of a potential client and let them run with it because that's what they do. And so our revenue model is shifting dramatically to matchmaking, very little to direct consulting.
It's just beautiful how that system has developed, and like you said, it's just built incredible fruition. Now, let's kind of pivot a little bit more toward like the business infrastructure and systems. Naturally, you have hired on other sales individuals that kind of help you fulfill these relationships, and I love this approach because it's so drastically different. So let's kind of walk me through kind of how you're able to kind of build that infrastructure out and really develop sales teams, but they're not focused on pitching. They're focusing on collaboration and the compensation, the structure, the just kind of the organizational side of things. Because I think long term, that's where a lot of sales people are going to start going toward, because obviously cost to acquire customer, all that stuff. It's going out the window. So I'd love to kind of get what you're seeing and what have you done in your own business.
Yeah, so let me answer in a way with clients we work with because it's the same exact structure. So I have a realtor, young guy just started, typical real estate, right? They get into the office and they say, hey, here's our lead list, start calling, right? And they want to see a certain number of dials a day. They want to see all these things. And then his goal to build a big book is to just keep dialing for dollars. He came to me because he was referred from someone in his office and he said, dude, this can't be the formula. Like, this cannot be how I'm going to build a whole career. And I said, it's how you can start. Like, there is money in the phone for sure, right? Fanatical Prospecting, great book if you want to learn how to cold call and just plow through deals, right? We are now 3 months in with him on filling his calendar with any meeting he can get, asking intelligent questions and adding value. His meetings have gone from 1 to 2 a week to 5 to 7 a week. And from the 5 to 7, he is producing the next 5 to 7. So now his network now is filling his meeting flow, and he's not having to outbound call. Now he is still hitting his daily quotas and still doing outbound calls, but because he's meeting everybody, asking good questions and adding value, he is then getting so many introductions and connections on the backside, or he'll make a bunch of introductions and 6 weeks later, someone will be like, hey, we need to sync back up because I must have missed something, right? Like, what do you really do? Because you keep adding value to me. Like, how can I help? And now all of a sudden you're having a meeting where they're literally just asking how they can help you. This is the exact same formula my salespeople go through, except they do it extreme, right? Because I pay them to do it. So their goal is to go out and meet 20 to 25 meetings a week. They go to every networking event. And their only quota that I hold them to is how many connections are you making a month? How many connections are you making a month, right? You better, out of every meeting, make a connection. You better track it on the sheet. And if you just keep making connections, deals flow. Real time. Yesterday, we did a check-in with one of my sales reps, and he goes, hey, you know what? This guy's been hounding me. He wants me to come sell for him. I said, fantastic. That means he sees value in what you're doing, and he's trying to headhunt you. Now we'll close him on a contract. And so we built the retainer program specifically for this client because this guy continues to see the value that our sales reps driving. And now we'll get this guy into probably a $15,000 to $18,000 contract for a short period of time. My sales rep will crush the project for him. And while that's happening, another deal will probably pop up. So it's just that you have to stick to the process, and then you have to know what you're going to benchmark. So is it number of meetings? Is it referrals given? And you got to follow up. So I'm always looking at the systems, like, are you tasked in tracking everything? How many referrals did you send? How many meetings did you have?
Well, because see, it's like one of the things that I've known, and we get this logically, right? Like, Devin, you have relationship and, like you said, leverage with other individuals that I don't know. And they already know, like you and trust you. And naturally, as you refer someone over to me, and vice versa, I got a lot of people on my podcast that know, like, and so naturally, if I refer them, they will most likely have a meeting because, oh, Christian, or vice versa, Devin, oh, well, I'll meet up with this guy. And the reason why I think this is such an interesting approach is because we're starting to see, like I was mentioning, the cost to acquire a customer, ads been going up. You go into a cold audience, these ads ads are not effective anymore, and they're constantly having to be changed, modified, adjust, try to hook, attract, funnel processes and systems. The conversions are decreasing. Even if you have a really optimized funnel, it's so tough. And I've seen a lot of businesses and companies that are trying to pivot more toward the referral and partnership agreements. And so what I like to talk a little bit now, Devin, is kind of the structure of partnerships. Okay. So let's say, for example, you find a deal, and like you said, maybe it might not be your direct service, but you're like, hey, you know what? I like this guy. I want to help him. And maybe anybody that's referred to that person and they provide that service, I can get a compensation with that. And people start thinking kind of, exponential that way in those different verticals. So I like this, help us understand what kind of deals did you structure, partnerships, referral programs that you've been able to structure that have been very, very fruitful, and how have you been very strategic with that?
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk about BBSI, which is interesting because they're really good at this. 95% of BBSI's business nationally, and they've got over 80 locations now, comes from referrals. And so they went out and they built a channel partner structure, right, where they're incentivizing insurance agents to move business to them. There's a workers' comp piece, so it's natural for them anyways. And they built a whole model on nurturing, teaching, and expanding channel partners. So that's one example, right? They sell workers' comp, payroll, and HR. Who sells those things? Well, insurance agents do. We're stickier. We're going to pay you. That's a pretty black and white one. What I would say is this. Let's think through your ideal client. Let's say your ideal client is a 7-figure marketing or ad agency, right? We could use real talk, right? And they are in that mindset of, hey, you know what? We have a strong foundation. We have a good core team. Maybe we have a stateside team and an outsourced team. We're fulfilling our services. We understand our identity. We understand how to price. We built this foundation. And now we're going to scale, right? And we're going to scale to 8 figures, and we're going to come alongside Christian to do that. And he's going to help crush it. What I want you to think about is, what are all of the things that your 7-figure ad agency is spending money on? What do they spend money on? They spend money probably on content creation, right? So there's probably photography, videography. They probably have copywriting. They probably have a tool suite that is crazy, right? Social posting suites, maybe ad buying suites, maybe PPC suites. Maybe they have keyword optimization tools that they're using, right? I would then start looking at all these things they're spending money on, and I would say, how do I get to know one of those things? Real example, again, continuing to make this very real. I just sat down with someone that runs one of the largest keyword optimization softwares in the world. And they happen to be based out of Reno, which is where I am. And we had a great conversation. And as Christian's telling me, this is who I work with, and this is what I do, I'm sitting here going, yeah, great. You're going to need to know this guy, because this guy provides the tool to most of these agencies, and he can look at his book and see who they are. And then we could just reverse engineer how big the agencies are. We could create some content, we could collaborate. And now what happens if we further that conversation is we say, hey, Christian, it's beneficial for you to help scale your clients up, right? You need some more clients. So maybe we can, seed your next quarterly group. That's exciting. And if you're willing to pay a little bit, this company could generate some revenue. Oh, and by the way, all of your clients are probably using a tool like this. Why don't we incentivize them to move back to this tool instead of whoever they're using? And we'll give you a kickback there as well. That is a stupid synergistic relationship where now there's money flowing, right? There's relationships being developed and value being added on both directions from a tool that my clients are going to use. When I had my marketing agency, the photographer was one of the best referral sources for me because he did commercial photography, right? So he would do Google virtual tours, he would do commercial headshots, and then he would do commercial photos. And so I started to teach him, hey, this is who I want to know. And as you're taking these photos, let's just ask them a few more questions, right? Why are you taking the photos? What are they going to do with them? Where are they putting the photos? Are they getting their website redone? Like, what's the motive today to have these photos done? And then he would refer them to me, and we would go build new websites and do social media optimization and do SEO. And he became my biggest referral partner to the point where we were paying him as much commission as he made in photography. Right? But it was worth it because he was growing. About 20% of our book started to come from this person in the first couple of years. So I like to look for that vendor relationship that my client has And then I want to find a way to make it a strategic or monetized relationship that's mutually beneficial. And you got to earn trust and respect in that. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to sell our product or service, and there's so much more opportunity to align with other people and one, add value to our current clients, and two, maybe generate some cash flow, which would be great because cash flow from outside of your core business is great. It's another money stream.
Well, and it's such a the cost to acquire that individual is so minimal, and like you said as well, it's just that conversion is that building that relationship, and I love that those bucket concepts because I think it's just a different way of thinking because so many people think linear. It's like, okay, I got to get my ad in front of that person, or I got to get doing webinars or something like that. It's more of a one-on-one approach instead of thinking more of those buckets and hey, who already has my community, who already has my audience that they're serving with a vertical product, right? And then obviously I can be in this other vertical, and of course we're still serving the same ideal client. Just really, really awesome. Devin, I just appreciate the immense value that you brought today, just talking about networking, what you've been able to do in the referral side of things, and really structuring those different partnership agreements to really, like you said, a synergistic relationship long term where hey, everybody's benefiting. My question as well, though, my next question is like, with those connections that you don't see any fruit from, right? You keep adding value and adding value. And I think I already know the answer to this, but do you ever slow down and say, hey, I'm not going to, introduce them to any more? Or do you say, you know what, I'm just going to keep adding value because I never know where it leads? Love to get your response.
Yeah. So, yes, we always keep adding value. I would say this, there are a subset of people in our CRM that don't have a task assigned. So I said, everyone in our CRM has to have a task assigned. We call it the black hole, right? There are people in there that don't have task assigned. Some of that might be, it is a high influence relationship we haven't quite nurtured yet. And we have to be very delicate on how we're going to follow up. And a lot of that is, it's a misaligned relationship with someone who's a taker, not a giver. They have the wrong attitude and they're too salesy. And if that's them and we have made the relationships and we're getting the feedback from the people we're introducing that these guys are just selling, then we will move them down to like a 30, 60, 90-day check-in. I will do that check-in a few times. If they continue to ask and I continue to refer and the feedback continues to be sales, I will then reach out to them and say, hey, if you're open to it, I'd love to talk about your sales strategy. I'm not getting the best feedback. I don't think your close rate's as good as it probably could be. Would you be open to working together? Because I think we could help you. And if they're still stubborn and think that they're amazing, then we just move them to the black hole. And it's because I want to make sure that the people I'm introducing aren't just trying to hard close everybody. And so that's kind of the play. I would say that those people still pay attention on social. They still are around your network. They'll still see you at events or conferences. They'll still understand your authority. Occasionally they'll send a referral. We just don't put more energy into it if all they're doing is taking.
No, I appreciate that because I mean, it's a real conversation to have because I mean, obviously there are going to be, and again, 80% of individuals will just be, above and beyond and just give value. But always you have those, oddballs a little bit. So I appreciate kind of clarifying that a little
bit. And you'll
see
them, like you'll identify them pretty quick. And we have like, there's a couple and they'll call, or they're the ones that like show up to your business 7 times. And you're like, that's so great that that's what you've been taught. That's not how we work.
Speaking of this, what other would you say like red alerts should people be aware of when they're maybe having these conversations, introductions, maybe even just facilitating like partnership agreements, things like that, that they should be aware of? That's like, oh, maybe I need to kind of slow down on this and maybe focus on other opportunities that are presented.
Yeah, so I think that that taker versus giver mentality is huge. Kind of a subset of that is scarcity versus abundance mindset. If you're talking to someone that thinks there's scarcity, meaning that your market sector is too small and it's too competitive and they're holding on because they're worried someone's going to take their client, like that's probably not the person to work with. We want someone who's an abundance thinker who understands that there's more deals and opportunity than any of us could possibly chase. Matter of fact, if I don't even like using the word competitors, I like using the phrase partners in awareness. I love people in my space because they're preaching the same message and they're just doing it in their own way, but at least they're educating the marketplace on the value that someone in our company or position could add, right? When you get into the relationship of agreements, I would be careful because not everything has to be monetized. And I think so often people try to run into a monetized relationship where it's like, we're going to track referrals and make agreements and you pay me and I pay you and all this other stuff. And like that can take work. Like it can take time and money to track like, oh, at my marketing agency, I closed 21 deals last month and 14 of those deals came from Devin. And here's how much four of those clients didn't pay me. So I'm only paying them on the 10. And, like it can become cumbersome. So what I would say is if there's a way to have a strategic partnership where you can co-create content, you can have structured co-marketing, you guys can advocate and bring in either new prospects or advocate to your current client lists in a mutually beneficial way where everyone's winning because there's content being created and there's impact, then the money may not need to be there. Like your monetary win is you're going to pick clients up, their monetary win is they're going to pick clients up. And both your guys' takeaways, you end up with maybe some new prospects, some new people in your database. If you get into a monetized relationship with someone, it needs to be someone that's going to continue to create deal flow for an extended period of time. So you need to understand, like, do they have the wherewithal to continue to do deal flow? Because if they only work with 5 clients a year, it's probably not going to work. But if it's an agency that has 600 clients, okay, I see potential, right? If it's a consultant who's on a stage or wrote a book or is doing something influential and may have a small niche client base, but has a big market exposure, okay, well, let's talk about that. So I always want to look for those leverage points. I want to look for long-term deal flow. And then if the person you're talking to is the smartest person in the room, and this is kind of hard to identify, but I think you can understand the subset. This is the person where they won't ask questions and they won't stop talking. And it's all about, I'm amazing because I did. I'm amazing because of this. I'm great because of this. I'm the best because of this. Or they willingly talk crap about competitors. Like those are some of those triggers where like you got to pay attention because if they're going to do those things to you, they're going to do it about you. So there's just kind of like some brain dump on some things we look for.
No, and I appreciate that because I think that's good when whenever someone's walking through this, there are certain things that you need to be aware of because obviously, we only have X amount of bandwidth or attention span, right? And the thing is you want to make sure you're putting your attention, your resource, your energy towards something that's actually going to build fruit and just being aware of those. Okay, hey, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't spend as much time and energy into it. And now I would like to talk a little bit about serendipities because just real quick story, because one of the things that literally just happened to me within this last week, I was trying to get someone on my podcast. It's a pretty big name and so forth, and very excited. I won't mention who, not yet until we have them on. But the thing is I had this one connection that knew him personally. They introduced me, but they never responded back to my email. That's okay. That's fine. Whatever. I understand people are busy. Then I had another individual that also knew him. He warmly introduced me. And then he's like, okay, hey, I should respond because now all of a sudden, 2 of the people that are, networked and connected, they're mentioning this guy's name. I should connect. And it was just a cool serendipity because see, as you start going down and more into this, you start realizing that these triangles, right? And it just was a cool serendipity moment for me. I thought, oh, this is really cool. Yeah, 2-3 people that are referring me and mentioning, hey, you should touch base with this guy. And obviously now it's, building that relationship. I'd love to kind of get your just a few stories that you found, like just serendipity moments, like, that was cool connection.
Yeah, so I love that story, by the way. And so we're working a pretty large retainer agreement right now. And we were referred 5 times to this association organization. And what's interesting is like the first one, and it's interesting because age used to be a huge issue, right? I started my first agency at 21. And so it used to become this thing where like if you don't have gray hair, or you're not bald, or you're not old, like they just won't listen. I think people are way more receptive to young entrepreneurship now. But the first introduction that was made, that's the feeling I got. We had a quick conversation and it was like, well, who are you? Blah, blah, blah. I'm amazing. Even though they were referred, right? Like they were referred to me to solve a problem that they admittedly had. And then they were referred a second time, they were referred a third time, and then the fourth time, and then the fifth time they were referred by someone who's very reputable in town and said, no, hey, this is who you're going to work with. And I got on the meeting and it was funny because the guy repositioned and he said, man, apparently I missed something in our first conversation. I said, it's up to you, man. I was trying to ask the right questions to understand how to help you. And it seemed like we couldn't have a real conversation. So if you're open to having a real conversation today, maybe we could find a way to work together. And he had changed his positioning to this big ego, I'm amazing. And he humbled himself in the meeting and said, like, man, you know what? I haven't moved the needle. Maybe we do need to have a conversation. Ask whatever you need to ask. And I asked a bunch of questions. We found out his pain points. We figured out the strategy. We built the plan and we executed. But sometimes it takes multiple touches. What I would also say is sometimes the relationship and the referral matter because you may have a perception that you have a good relationship and influence somewhere, and the other person may not feel the same way. And so if you can get 2 or 3 introductions, it plays at those dynamics, which we, the person being introduced, don't understand. The family dynamics, sometimes there's like those interpersonal relationships somewhere. Sometimes there is like tension in the relationship. And so they make the introduction, but there's like some foundational tension with maybe a deal that's going slightly sideways, or maybe I offended you because I said something wrong, which happens. We're all people. So maybe some of those things happen. The other thing I would say is this: when you get referred a lot of times to people and it continues to show up, we've had deals where we sit down with people, we have great meetings, and then like I probably have a dozen where a year or 2 years later, they're back and they're like, well, maybe we should work together. And it's like, well, I mean, I'm still here and I'm still doing the same thing. And yes, you referred to me again because, in this one case, your deal flow is not going. Like you've been capped at 6 figures a year in your sales income. And every time we meet, you're struggling to get to, 250,000 a year. I can help, right? And I told you I could help 2 years ago, right? So I think that that's the thing is like, if you build this network and you just nurture it and you continue to add value, continue to be genuine and authentic and transparent, you're going to have these moments where when you ask your network for something, you'll get 2 or 3 tee-ups. And then that allows you to have quicker movement, and or you can close deals over an extended period of time because they just keep getting put in front of you again and again.
Yeah, and I think it's so fun because to me it's like buying a house. There's always these creative deals that you can establish, and these are serendipity moments. And like you said, it's I think the best deals are sometimes not even on the marketplace. Or things that aren't being advertised, and that's the reality is just hey, who do you know? And that they can open up a door that's in that bigger arena that you are not able to open up, and that they basically pull their hand and say, hey, yeah, come into the bigger arena. And I think that's what's so incredible. And you can do that for other people as well, that are lower caliber. And like you said, just those, I just appreciate those serendipity moments. I think that's just really awesome. Devin, how can our audience reach out to you, be part of your community, and just touch base with what you got going on, bud?
Yeah. So since I told everyone I'll meet with anyone, if any of you guys want to have a conversation, I'm always game. My social handles are at DP Sizemore. The website is yourreferralpartner.com or yourrp.com. You can reach out to us there. So either personally at that DP Sizemore or yourreferralpartner.com.
Awesome, guys. And those links will be in the description below, as well as his LinkedIn account, so you can communicate with him and connect on that as well. And Devin, just appreciate the immense value. Is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience before we let you go?
Yeah. So I did this to you on the last call, and I'll give everyone the kind of the teaser. So I own a cat cafe as well, which was a super random project. So if you want to talk about unique cash flow and super random projects, the fact that I'm a business consultant, I've had an ad agency, a co-marketing space manufacturing company, and I own a cat cafe, should tell you that I'm open to talking about really cool opportunities. I want to hear your story. I want to hear your dreams. I want to see that crazy, stupid idea because I think it's possible and I want you to think it's possible too. If you don't have a coach, mentor, or advisor, you need one. I don't care who it is, but you should be seeking advice from someone because you got to get out of your own space. That's always been my number one advice is you've got to have someone leading and guiding you because you're going to have hard days and you're going to want to quit and you need someone to tell you not to and to guide you through that.
Awesome, guys. And that, my friend, is Devin Sizemore. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. Until next time, remember, be uncommon, if you can.
Yo, this is Christian D. Evans, Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast. We thank you so much for listening to this amazing episode. If you feel and you know that this was valuable to you, please show some love to our amazing guest by liking this, by commenting on this, by making sure that you do a nice 5-star review and just show some love to our guest. That'd be really awesome. Also, make sure you share this with a friend, a family, a colleague, someone that you believe would bring value to their life right now. And guys, we just want to say thank you again for just being part of our community. If you want to have more resources, don't be afraid. Go to christiandevans.com. You can actually schedule a phone call with me, or you can send me an email at christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. That's christian.evans@beUncommonIfYouCan.com. Always love to hear some feedback and let me know what is the number 1 or 2 things that you are struggling in your business and your life, and we'll make sure we have those conversations. Guys, that is Journey with Christian D. Evans podcast, and until next time, remember, be uncommon if you can. Cheers.